Hey everybody, John Kublank, and here's another episode of Blanket Thoughts. I just want to say a quick thank you to Kristen Ottea from Ottea Taxidermy. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been a minute since I put out content, and you were brave enough to come on and be my first one. Guys, this story is incredible. She is pretty much what I'm calling the most interesting woman in South Texas. You're going to find out for yourself, but style, beauty, and grace, she has it all. Please enjoy this episode of Blanket Thoughts with Kristen Ottea from Ottea Taxidermy. Hey everybody, John Kublank here, and we have another episode of Blanket Thoughts. Blank because of my last name, and ET because we could talk about everything. And today I have an amazing guest, Miss Kristen Ottea from Ottea Taxidermy.
Yes.
Kristen, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for allowing me to come in and find out a little bit about your story and about this business. I saw you on Facebook, and I was immediately intrigued.
Aw, thank you. You're so sweet.
Yeah, no, and I just looking around it, I'm not the first person just to jump into it. On the wall over here, you had some write-ups in the San Antonio Express News because of the, I guess, juxtaposition between modeling and taxidermy, right?
Yes, it's not something you see all the time.
Yeah.
So people are like, whoa, when they see it. And I'm like, well, you know, it's how I was raised.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. How did taxidermy come into your life?
So I've always been an outdoors person. I've always loved the outdoors, loved hunting, fishing, all of that. My dad has had the taxidermy. He started it in 1975. So when I was itty bitty, both my mom and dad were up here. So this was kind of like my daycare, I guess you could say. When I got out of school, I came up here. So I've always been involved in the taxidermy world my whole life. I used to drag like deer heads around when I was, 5, instead of having normal toys like a normal kid would have. So it's just kind of, like I said, it's always been in my life, and I just love the outdoors, and I like anything to do with the outdoors. I had thought about becoming a hunting guide, just when I was in my teens, because I thought that would be so cool.
Right.
But then my dad had this place, and I'm an only child, so I'm like, well, it would be kind of cool to carry on the family business since he's had it, his whole life.
Absolutely.
So now I'm carrying it.
I hear there's actually a big problem in society today with people or families in your situation where you have an individual from a past generation, maybe it's the greatest generation, maybe it's boomer, and now they're retiring for good. And what do they do with this business? Because a business is more than just profit.
Yeah, it's it's a whole it's your whole life. Like you put your whole life into this.
Yeah,
so,
and you're not just alone. I know that there's a busy shop back here. You have employees that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
How is it being so young? Because, most people don't ever run a business, but you being so young, and even though you've been in this business your whole life, how has it been kind of taking on all the aspects of the business?
It's been, I'm not going to say it's been easy because I would be lying. The work part, like doing the mounts and stuff, was a lot easier to learn than the business side of it. And then it's just, at the end of the day, it's a lot of stress on your shoulders, making sure, because you have, your employees that depend on you for them to make their rent, for their livelihood, everything. Yeah. So then it's all on your shoulders to make sure, you price everything right, you get enough business, promoting, like all of that all ties back into making sure all they're taken care of too. But I would say it's getting a lot easier. This year has been the most smooth year, knock on wood.
Very cool, yeah.
And so now I'm starting to teach like one of my employees to kind of help me in my position, so that way it takes a little weight off of my shoulders instead of me doing everything.
Yeah.
But it was definitely rough at the very beginning because you're just trying to like learn. My dad did everything real old school, so I had to completely change the whole dynamic of everything to do new school stuff. And I couldn't ask him because he got out of it. So he, obviously he knows a lot, but all the newer stuff that we're doing, I had to ask a lot of like my taxidermy friends, Google, like YouTube, and just kind of trial and error.
So is that something that you're consistently doing, is trying to continue in your education?
Most definitely.
Yeah?
All the time. And that's what I tell everybody, like, you don't ever stop learning. I mean, I learn stuff all the time, and you might be doing something one way, and then it's like, well, maybe I'll try it this way and see if it works. And it might be so much freaking easier. I mean, even just like ways of like painting to make things go more smooth and fast. Like, you're always learning. You never stop.
What is something that most listeners wouldn't know about taxidermy necessarily that, either you bring as a taxidermist or something that you've learned just yourself through taxidermy that maybe is an interesting fact about what y'all do? Because I don't know anything really about it at all, truthfully.
So a lot of people, just in general, people don't realize that the whole, like, inside the faces, it's all foam. Like, there's like styrofoam basically underneath.
You mean it's not the parts of the body?
Yeah, it's not the parts of the animals.
Okay.
And, like, the eyes aren't real. They're a glass eye. The nose, like, everything's real except for obviously the insides, and then the eyeballs are not real. And we do paint work on the face and stuff. So a lot of people are like, they don't realize that it's just a little tiny piece of the skull that you have that screws on top.
To make sure that it balances out the antlers?
So, it just kind of sits on top. I'll show you in there. So people don't realize that. And then, like, also, it's funny when people come pick up their mounts, they're so, like, scared to, like, touch them because they're expecting them to be, like, they're fragile, don't get me wrong, but they're expecting them to be, like, so fragile. And then I, like, grab them and, like, whip them around, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you're gonna break it.
Especially because I'm sure it's not inexpensive to get this done.
Yeah.
So, they've already invested, but it's not something that's just gonna break.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
What are some of the more favorite of your animals that you've had a chance to have in the shop?
I like doing African animals. They're so freaking beautiful, and I mean, I love going to Africa. I've been a bunch, so it just kind of like takes me back every time I mount one to Africa, and it's like you almost kind of like feel like you're there.
Absolutely.
Per se. So it's really cool to do those. I like them.
And it looks like you said that you've been to Africa a lot. It looks like you are starting to do more and more guided tours like you once dreamed about as a teenager.
Yeah, so I'm trying to kind of like work into doing that as well. I've made a lot of connections and friends over there. And like I said, I love to go. I've hunted a ton over there. So now I want other people to be able to experience it, because when people think like Africa, you don't think you just think hunting and it's going to be like the desert and dry, and it's just not going to be like beautiful. But I mean, they have mountains there, there's water, like natural streams, and it's just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how big Africa is as a continent, number one.
Yeah, you don't realize there's a whole, like, the jungle and like everything. I mean, it is completely, even just in South Africa, if you go, down by, let's just say, like Cape Town, like in that like George area, along that southern border, there's mountains, like big mountains, and people don't realize that. And it's green, and it gets really cold. Like, it's even snowed. My PH sent me some pictures of snow, and people don't think that when you go to Africa. So I want people to experience that, even if you don't hunt. Like, you can still go. Like, there's Kruger National Park that's freaking stunning. There's Victoria Falls too. That's in a different country, but even like in Namibia, like the desert there, the dunes, there's just so much stuff you can see that's so cool.
So when I read on the story that when you were in modeling, you had international travel, and you had that opportunity, and now in your taxidermy and hunting life, you have international travel. Did you ever think that you would be able to kind of travel the world and see
Not
so
in
much?
taxidermy, no. In modeling, just because that's kind of what you did, you would travel to the different markets and work, but incorporating that into taxidermy, no.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm, like you saw, like my post, I'm trying, like in Canada, like I have some friends up there in Canada, so I'm just trying to like get people don't like to get out of their comfort zone, and I've come to realize, they're like, oh, that's so far. That's what I get from everybody that I'm like, come to Africa, and they're like, oh, it's a 15-hour flight. I'm like, what's 15 hours of your life if you're gonna go have a whole experience for a couple of weeks? It's life-changing.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm really trying to like bring people to see that.
Well, and I think too, when you know that the person that you're going with has already had experience and that, you know, you're not going at it alone, or that there's not, you know, less unexpected.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's kind of what I like to do as well with the people, is they feel comfortable going with me. Because I've been, and I'm gonna try to start going to different countries rather than, I've just been to South Africa, so I'm gonna go to Namibia in April. I'll probably go to Namibia again in October. I'm gonna do some tiger fishing, so I also like to go fishing there as well. But I'm gonna start working my way up to go see the different countries, because I mean, like I said, South Africa is beautiful, but there's so much more to see.
Absolutely. So as far as where your path has gone, what really made you decide that taxidermy was going to be it? Because it seems like you're pretty committed now. Obviously your dad, but I mean, was there ever a thought of going off and doing something else, or have you ever thought maybe, you know, this wasn't for you? I
mean, I was probably like 18 when I was in my modeling career, like 17, 18. I was probably 17. That was so long ago. I was 17, and I was so passionate about the modeling, and I was like, man, this would be so cool to do as a career, but they were so hard on your weight and everything else. It just wasn't healthy for what I was trying to do at that time. I know probably times have changed a little bit. So I had considered doing that, and then I was like, well, maybe a makeup artist, because I like artistic stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, this, you know,
right.
All that type of stuff. So I had considered doing a makeup artist, but then I was like, you got to move to New York City, and you have to live in the city to be successful at that. You can't live in the freaking boondocks and be a makeup artist and make money. So the city is not for me. I'm pretty antisocial. I like to be away from people. I like the quiet. I like nature. So
yeah.
So I was like, that's not gonna work. So then,
especially in New York City.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't go to college, never did any of that. And I know in today's world, it doesn't completely limit you, but it helps to have that, to give you, I guess, a push.
Sure.
I'm assuming, like I said, I never went.
Puts you in a lot of debt, I'll tell you that right now.
That's what I've heard. So I didn't do any of that. And like I was saying earlier, this place, I just kind of wanted to keep it in the family name.
Yeah.
So, and it's just something my dad did when he was young, and just the thought of someone else taking that and then doing who knows what with it, it just was like, man. And I know where I was here, so I know the hours they spent, him and my mom, because we did the meat processing as well next door, and it just was meaningful for me to take it. So,
and y'all are still doing all of the same operations as you were when y'all started?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Ago.
It's the same location too.
Oh wow.
So it's like, it was just cool even thinking like my dad was in here when he was in his 20s. Like,
it's a legacy.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's on a deeper level than just doing taxidermy and coming in and whatever. And I really like to preserve people's memories, because like I said, I'm a big hunter and I love to mount all of my animals. So then in the evening when I'm eating dinner, I look at all my mounts, and it's like each one has its specific memory. So I look at this one and I'm like, oh wow, like I remember that whole experience. So when I do these, it's not just I'm doing a taxidermy mount and like, here's your stuff, go.
Yeah.
Because like I know that each one of these animals has a special memory tied to it, which is also meaningful as well. So to answer your question, I had considered doing something different, but at the end of the day, this is kind of where I was drawn to.
Yeah, and I find that it really doesn't matter what you do, but you have to find the thing that brings you the joy or whatever makes you happy. And you know, my day job, I'm in hospice, which is a little bit outside of the norm, but you know, helping people is really what you know, drives me. And so I was reading some of these letters that you have on the wall and talking about memories, and the one from it looked like a little boy, you know, and
I know,
can imagine,
it was so cool.
That makes you feel good. You're like, man, this is awesome.
I know. That's why I put it up there. Because I sometimes still will stop and read it. It's just so neat. Like that I made someone feel that way.
Absolutely.
Just by, you know, doing taxidermy.
And so one of the things that I've noticed too, and I'm sure it definitely helps, is that you said that you're incorporating new school into, you know, this existing business, but with the modeling and with all the hunting and big game, you get a lot of attention on social media. Does that help, or has that been a big help for you?
No, it definitely does. And I know it like sounds funny, but a lot of like, the guys like to say, oh, like most taxidermists are, men or they're old or whatever, Bob or Billy Bob or whatever, you know, you have your taxidermy image in your mind. So a lot of the guys are like, well, this is what my taxidermist looks like. And they'll like show them a picture of me and they're like, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think I think you definitely break the mold of what people would imagine. And I'm guessing you're getting a lot of attention too. I saw you at the reptile show.
Oh,
Did you get to go out there?
Yeah,
that looks pretty awesome.
Fun. I love reptiles.
Yeah, my son was very jealous. He was like, Dad, that's where you're going? That's where you're going? I was like, no, that's not where I'm going. Aww. She was just there. But of that, was that some sort of just they invited you over there for that? Or
on that, I just went.
I just went
because I freaking love them. They're having another one at the beginning of September, so I'm like, I might go to that one too. Yeah, I love reptiles. My dad raised snakes. Like he had a bunch of them when he was younger, so I was kind of just brought up into that. So I find them fascinating.
That's so interesting. So I guess being an only child, your dad already in taxidermy, you had no choice but to get your hands dirty, right?
No, 100%. I've always been a tomboy. I mean, when people heard that I was going to do modeling, I mean, I couldn't even walk in high heels. I don't know how to do cartwheels, like any girly things. Like I don't know how to do any of that.
But you definitely know how to sight in a rifle,
I can do that. But my dad raised me up as he would a boy. Like that's just, I went four-wheeling, I played in the mud, like I ran barefoot everywhere. I was like a little Tarzan lady or something. I don't know.
It worked though, right?
I wouldn't change it for anything. I love it because I don't do the whole curly thing.
Well, and I think the hunting is super interesting. Of all the times that you've had a chance to go out, especially on the big game, what was your favorite so far?
My crocodile hunt was really cool. It took days, so, because you would see them, but just because you see them, like you can't just go get them because they're in the water. So you bait them up and then you have to just wait. And then they'll come up and then they're like, no, and then they'll go off again.
That was huge too. How big was that?
It was right at 13 feet. So that was really, really cool. And along with that, it was just neat to think like that thing they were saying was probably like 50-ish years old, somewhere in there. Ooh. So it was just really cool to think that thing has been around like longer than me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was just, that was cool in itself.
And when was this? When did you get it?
It was just this last May.
Oh, last May.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is very exciting, very recent.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. And then one of the guys had shot a hippo too. I didn't get to, but that was pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, and hippos, I think, aren't they the mammal that kills the most humans?
Yeah, they're so mean.
They attack boats or something.
Yeah,
right?
But that safari was really cool. And I shot a hyena as well, which was neat.
So talk to me about packing in, packing out. What are you able to take in? What if you were thinking about going on a trip like this? What's sort of the protocol?
So, like to go to Africa. Yeah. So typically, it depends. If you're going to go hunting, pick what you want first. Kind of have like your budget in mind. Mm-hmm. And then you don't bring any of the meat back because of you can't bring the meat back because of the rules or whatever. But you eat it all in camp, so that's kind of cool. Okay. You get to try all your kills and stuff, and then they will either sell it to like local meat markets, and then they'll resell it again to make it's all profit. Like I guess, to generate more money, mm-hmm. or just depending on what animal it is, they'll donate it out to people for people to eat. Mm-hmm. And then you bring all your trophies back. They'll ship them back in a big crate.
That's awesome.
So
when you're out on the actual safari, when you're out there, do you just go out for the day and then go back to camp, or do you actually stay out there overnight, or have
you go back to camp? Yeah. So I know on like Alaska and stuff, it's different if you're going like moose hunting. Mm-hmm. But for Africa, now let me backtrack. On certain safaris, then you will stay out. Like it depends. On the ones I go on, you go out in the morning, hunt, and then you come back at lunch, eat lunch, then you go back out again, mm-hmm. hunt, and then you come back at night.
Yeah, not necessarily just out there all day until you kill something.
Yes. Now the croc we did, because we didn't know when it was going to come up to the bait. So
you just had to wait.
yeah, we literally just waited. I mean, and waited. It took 3 days to get it, of all days sitting.
I have a hard time with patience. I think this would be hard for me a little bit.
Yeah, no, it was definitely time consuming. But it was really nice to be out, like I said, because it's dead silent. There's nothing. I mean, the closest asphalt road to where we were at was probably like 30 to 40 minutes away. Everything's dirt roads. So there's just nothing.
And you're just chilling.
silence. Yeah, it's just silent. So it was really peaceful.
Do you ever get nervous while you're out there, like that something's maybe hunting you?
Not really. If I was by myself, probably, but you have a PH that's experienced, that knows the terrain and knows the animals and everything else. And they're extremely good shots. So if something was to charge you, there's a good chance that they'll get it before it gets to you.
Since that crocodile, a lot of the game over there is bigger, are you using a larger rifle?
Yeah, so the croc I shot with a 375.
Oh, okay.
Buffalo, like they'll use, that, or like a 416 or a, bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're taking the guns over, especially when you're going through airport security, do you get any, or do you I guess you have to check them all?
So I use their guns over there,
okay.
But like when I went to Canada, the people that I was with brought their guns, and there is paperwork, and like they're a pain in the butt about it. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, what's in here?
But it's cool that you get to use their guns over there, so it makes it less,
it's so much easier. Anywhere I go hunting, I try to use people's guns. That way I don't have to mess with bringing it.
Yeah, the paperwork.
Yeah.
So as far as your customers go, you're servicing a large area. I'm sure there's a large population of South Texas. Mm-hmm. Do you have people from all over now with social media contacting you about it?
I've had some people like actually send me their mounts. Like they'll live in, Nebraska or Colorado or wherever, and they'll actually send me their mounts, and then I'll ship them back up to them.
How do they do that? Just package it in
They crate it. Well, it'll be mounted.
Oh.
Yeah, to send it down, they'll have it skinned out already, and you can just freeze it, and then you have like the little skull, and sometimes they'll cut the antlers so it folds in. Like I just got a caribou from Alaska. People live here this morning.
All right.
So yeah, you just freeze the skin and then ship it overnight, and then it'll still be fine.
And about how long does it take to mount or to do?
So you can do, like if you're experienced and you're quick, you can do 2 in a day. Like mount 2 of these. Now that doesn't mean they're going to be ready to pick up that same day, because there's dry time and all of that and the finishing that goes into it. So it's like a 4 to 6 week process from when they get mounted. It has to dry and all that stuff. But you can put 2 together in a day. My turnaround's typically 8 to 12 months, because I'll get around 700 or 800 shoulder mounts to do in a season.
Oof.
So we usually will start mounting in February, like right after deer season like winds down, and then we try to stop mounting like end of November, because then the deer season really kicks up like December 1st.
Summer months and that sort of stuff, what are you doing? Just the ones that came in
so
before?
all of these came in this past deer season. So that's what we do all summer long, just because it's, people constantly coming and dropping stuff off, and you can actually get stuff done.
Absolutely. Like you said, and I've seen you kind of interacting. It's not just drop off. There's a lot of questions.
Yes.
Having to follow up. You want to make sure. And again, this is probably, you only realistically get kind of one chance to mount it right, I would imagine, and so you want to make sure that it's positioned the right way.
Exactly. Yeah, make sure everything's good, and you have employees' questions, the phone, customers, like there's just a lot that goes into it.
How would somebody, if they were interested in learning about taxidermy, do like as a job, could somebody come in off the street and learn this, or is there some process?
You can. Some people have it too, and some people don't. Like I've hired people that just can't get it. No matter how hard I try, something does not click. So I would say you need to have some sort of artistic ability and have like an eye to see things. All the guys I have here have some sort of art that they do.
Sure. Well, and it's all in the detail, right? And that's where the art comes in. It's not slapping something together. It's not construction necessarily.
Exactly.
It's finishing.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. But so, yes, you could. I've hired guys that have never done, some of the guys in there have never even shot a deer. Like, they've never even hunted. But they're good, yeah. But yet they can make it look like a deer.
Not that I want to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just curious. Do you get any negative feedback or comments about the hunting or the taxidermy? This is a fairly sensitive economy that we live in right now.
Very. That's an understatement.
Yes. And so, I try to be open-minded, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are as much. How do you deal with that if you do get some?
If it's on online, I just ignore people. I used to try and, comment back and be like conservation and blah, blah, blah. And they don't, it's like literally they're just like this. Yeah. They don't care. So I just...
If they're not going to care, you're not going to care.
I hit the block button and then go on my day.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really what we're having to learn in general is that, when you have a microphone to say anything, people will say anything.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, people were open-minded to understand the whole process. Then I would waste my time, but yeah. I don't have time to waste. So blocking's a lot quicker than trying to explain.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate all the time that you've given me today. I've learned a lot. I know that our listeners will learn a lot, but I always like to kind of finish. If you could go back, ask yourself, maybe 10 years ago, maybe you're in that 18, 19-year-old, what would you tell Kristen then, now that you know what you know?
Be patient, because I was impatient.
Absolutely.
Yeah, take a deep breath and know that it'll all work itself out in the end. And there's no point in stressing, because stress does absolutely nothing.
This is true.
So that is what I would tell myself, because that's what I did. I would stress myself out and I'd get all worked up and angry and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what did that do? It literally did nothing.
Yeah, now that I'm getting into my mid-30s, close to 40, I realize how much wasted time on thinking about things that were not in front of me or worrying about tomorrow or yesterday.
Because you don't ever know what the future is going to hold. Just because you think it's going to go this way and you're so focused on making it this way, something could change in an instant and it'll go that way.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's good to have a goal and to have a life. This is what I want in my life and these are my goals. But there's no point in stressing and worrying and trying so hard to make it work. Because, like I said, it could change in a second. And then, what did you do all that for?
Yeah, then it was a waste of all that time.
Yeah, so I've been there. Hard work and patience that's what I would...
Well, it seems to have paid off for you, even though you would go back and tell yourself, but it looks like y'all are doing very well.
Yes,
thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course, I enjoyed it.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening to Blanket Thoughts. I am John Kublank, and until next time, thanks.